Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you, Luis and El Paso Young Republicans, for inviting me to speak today. I'm really excited to be here. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in El Paso, third generation El Pasoan. My family's been heavily involved in the community for many, many years. And I went to Lubbock and I received a BA in advertising. And I eventually moved back to El Paso over 5 years ago. At that point, I bought a small business, and it's in the Northeast, and called the Pet Barracks. It's a dog and cat care facility, pet hotel. That's how I like to refer to it. I have about 20 employees, and we are currently working on building another location on the west side. So that'll be exciting. We'll probably be able to employ at least 30 more people in the community. So I'm really looking forward to that. Something that I always get asked is why I'm running. And I'm running because I'm ready for a change. We haven't had somebody in this district who has represented us and has really been our voice. And I think that it's time that we elect officials who are going to go to Austin and who are going to bring the issues from the people from District 29 to them, because we haven't had that. And we see some positive changes happening from the legislature, such as the property tax bill that they just passed. It takes effect this year, where they can't raise property taxes more than, I believe it's 3% a year. And had we had somebody in this seat fighting for that a long time ago, then maybe our property taxes wouldn't be so out of control. And there's things that we're getting forgotten on. The Texas Enterprise Fund, for example, they give incentives to big businesses to come to certain places, and but you look at the map of where they're going, and they're going Houston, Dallas, Austin for the most part. And West Texas only got $20 million of that fund, and it brought 4,000 jobs. And so that program needs to be revamped. It needs to be looked at so that we can get some incentives out to places like District 29 without burdening the taxpayers even more, which I think is very important. So with that being said, my key 3 issues are fiscal responsibility, sanctity of life, and defending personal freedoms. In the fiscal responsibility, I kind of talked about the property taxes, how we need to lower the tax burden for our residents, and that's really important that we look at certain programs that we're overspending on, or certain programs that the government shouldn't even be involved in to begin with. And if we can start making those cuts, cutting our spending, cutting what the tax burden is on people, it'll make a positive change, not only in our personal lives, but in the community and the economic growth and job growth. As a business owner, I know firsthand how regulations can curb business growth, how they can hurt businesses, and it's important to take that into consideration and implement policies that aren't going to strangle businesses. And that's how we'll see really positive growth in our community. Secondly, sanctity of life is really important to me. They actually define an individual as anyone from conception all the way through the gestation process and then up until natural death. However, in Texas Penal Code Section 19, it gives a waiver for women and doctors for that baby to not be considered an individual. And one thing I would want to do is strike down that waiver, because if we say that a baby is a human at conception, which 95% of biologists agree with, then why are we giving anyone a waiver to harm that baby? And so that's something that I would want to tackle in the legislature, is to have that section removed from the penal code, because it is our duty to protect life. And we're doing even though Texas is better than a lot of states, there's a lot more that we can do to make a positive impact on that. And finally, I want to talk about personal freedoms. I think that we're at a scary point in our life right now, in our nation. When you look at the Democratic Party right now, what's going on and who's in the lead, and he happens to be here in El Paso today, and that's Bernie Sanders. He has a lot of support, and people don't realize the negative impact that will have on our personal freedoms. And not only that, but also on our pocketbooks as well with an increase in taxes. It sounds nice to think, I guess, for some people, they think it sounds nice to just tax rich people and give things to poor people or of lower income. And that's not the truth, because we don't have, even the wealthiest people in America, if you took all of their wealth, I think there's 618 billionaires, if we took every single last dollar from them, every single thing that they own, we would only be able to pay for Medicare for all for 2/3 of 1 year. And so where's the rest of that money going to come from? You're going to be looking at taxing the middle class. You're going to be looking at decreasing the lowest tax bracket so that those people are being taxed at a higher rate. And so now that $15 minimum wage that they want to give to everyone, well, by the time you're done paying taxes, it's going to be less than what the minimum wage is even now. And I think that that's really important, because a lot of people think that these policies are going to help the community as a whole, but they're not. It's just going to hurt us. And that kind of went back into my fiscal responsibility, but also it comes down to personal freedoms, because that is socialism. And under socialism, the government has complete control over our lives. And anyone who says otherwise has not studied socialism. And no matter what they say, every time that socialism has been tried, it has been socialism. And there's no other way to make it any better. So this election that's coming up it's pretty important on the Democratic side right now, because it'll be interesting to see if the Democratic Party even lets Bernie have the nomination if people vote him in. But in November, it's going to be the most important election of our lifetime. And I would say even of lifetimes from people who have been around for a little bit longer than us, because we are either going to embrace socialism, or we are going to embrace our personal freedoms, we're going to embrace smaller government, and we're going to embrace being able to take control of our own lives. And that's what it's going to come down to in November. So it's really encouraging to see young people being involved, and I think that hopefully in 2022, even more people will get out there and put their name on the ballot for different positions. So, with that, he talked a little bit about my opponent, and that's a question a lot of people ask me is, who am I running against? And the thing is that I'm not running against an individual. I'm running against the establishment. I'm running against a member of the political elite who has been molded, who has been taught what to think, and he has been told what policies to implement, how to vote, and he is not a voice of the people. And so that's not just me. Everyone who's going to be running, and all the Republicans who are going to be running in November, for the most part, they're running against the establishment just like I am. So we're not really voting for individuals on that side. For the most part, I'm not going to speak to everybody because I don't know everybody. But for the most part, that's what it is on the Democratic ticket. It's people who have been chosen and molded and told what to do. And that's not how it should be. We should have a government by the people and of the people, and we should have a voice. And a lot of elected officials forget that, or if they even believed it when they went into office to begin with. So it's time for us to bring back a voice to this district. Not bring it back, because I don't know if we've ever really had one, but it's time for us to take control of it and to have a voice in Austin so that we can fight for District 29, where we've been forgotten. I didn't really know how long you wanted me to speak.
Yeah, we can definitely open it up for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We can have questions.
Does anyone have anything to start with?
I got some questions.
Yeah.
I got two questions.
Sure.
First question. What's your plan for getting newer, younger voters, especially Democrats in that district? Because that's going to be I think probably the key demographic to have people vote for you. Because there's just, the new age of voting is going to be kids our age. So what's your plan to get those younger voters? And second, you talked about the wavering. I totally agree with that policy. But what are the implications for if you do change the way the waiver is? How's that going to impact people who do violate that waiver? Like, what do you think? Is it going to be like a civil procedure, criminal procedure for people that do? And who gets affected most? Like mothers or the doctors or both? Or what are your secondary plans on that specific policy?
So great questions. I'll start with the second question about what would essentially the punishment be for someone who takes the life of an unborn child. And I think that that's going to take a lot of discussion to see what it looks like. One part of it is I think that we need to focus on the education, because so many women actually believe that the baby is a clump of cells. So I'm not necessarily all for putting women in jail for having an abortion. I think that they're being misinformed and undereducated on that topic. However, the doctors that are performing these abortions, they know exactly what they are doing. They know exactly that that what they're doing is ending a life. And so I'm not sure what that would look like, to be honest. I do think that there needs to be a lot of discussion in that. Hopefully it would be bipartisan discussion. And I think that would come from being able to educate people on the truth of it. And there's just so much misinformation. But no, I don't think that women should be thrown in jail, because a lot of them just don't understand. So there will be a huge push to educate women. And the second part is how I'll reach younger voters. Well, I think I have a advantage to begin with because I'm young, and I think I'm a little bit more relatable than a lot of the elite politicians who aren't really living. They're not here every day. They don't. I have a business in the community. I have a relationship with my customers, and I have employees that depend on me being able to keep the business open. So I have the business sense. I'm young, and then we're just gonna get out there, and I think that there's going to be a big push on our side to really just talk to people, get out to as many places as we can, and have that conversation. I think a lot of people, especially the Hispanic community, has not been reached out to, and I think that's so sad, because from what I know, the Hispanic culture tends to line up more with the Republican or the Conservative Party, but no one reaches out to them to talk to them about the options. And especially in a place like El Paso, where it's largely Hispanic, we can't ignore them when we shouldn't. No one should ever be ignored. And so I plan to get out there and really connect with people and have conversations.
I'd just like to make a comment because, you young people, it's really good to see you involved. But I think if you're out and come to the event so that people do see you, and there's more of an attraction for young people to come, come in. Also, your responsibility to reach out to your age group and inform them and educate them politely and with dignity and respect. And I think that's one of the things that Republicans are known for. They're not out there, being angry and yelling and screaming. They're presenting facts. And so if you could please reach out to your age group, because like Bethany said, we're in trouble. This country is in a lot of trouble. You guys are young. I think, living a bit, longer than you have. We see the writing on the wall, and it's scary. It's very scary.
Absolutely.
Any other question? So you talked about the I'm not sure if it passed. I think it did. The limiting the amount that property taxes can go up in the city, right?
It did pass.
Okay. Yes. Now, one of the components was that it was gonna limit the amount that property taxes can go up, but it was also going to allow for an increase in sales tax, right? So what's the balance there? Would you be in favor, or are you in favor of that law? Just kind of increase taxes in another way, or are you more looking to decrease taxes in general for the state?
I think it's important we decrease in general. I think that limiting in one area but raising in another is just kind of shifting where it's coming from. But it's all coming from the same place, right? It's all coming from our income. So there's a lot of things that we can discuss. There's a lot of different options that there needs to be an in-depth discussion in the legislature, and look at other places who have implemented different kinds of policies. There's different things, and I'm not sure if I wouldn't take a stand right now on which one, but there's different things that we can look at, such as if we abolish the income tax altogether at a federal level and just implemented a flat tax on sale on non-necessities, and then there's that would decrease the double taxation, because we make money and then we go spend it on something and we pay sales tax on that, and then we pay on our income, and then if you own a business you're going to pay on the income plus what the business made, and then you're going to pay franchise taxes if you spent $1 million, and then you pay your property taxes, and then on top of the property taxes you have the personal property, which that I would abolish that altogether, because that I buy a desk for my business and I have to list it, and then every year I pay taxes on the same thing at a depreciating value. So that's not even just double taxation. That's taxation for the life of the item that I purchased. And so I don't know if that directly answered your question, but I'm all for limiting it in general, and making sure that we're not double taxing people.
So in the city, the city's in trouble because of the fact that city council decides to keep on, enacting projects that put us more into debt, right? Or we just passed the $400 million bond because it was framed that the police, because how can you deny money to the police or fire department, right? But do they really need that amount of money if we are the safest or one of the safest cities in the United States? That's something, right? Or the Chihuahua Stadium that's putting us further into debt, or the stadium that they want to build in Duranguito, right? So those are the problems that like city council has, right? And that we need to fix on a local level. But what are the problems that you see that you can address for District 29 in the state arena?
Well, I think that there are certain things we can look into, and for example, looking at different municipalities and seeing what funding they actually get from the state and figuring out how we can audit it, because we're filling in a lot from the property taxes and everything, and you're right, it's going to things that we're not really seeing any benefit from. And I think it's important that the state make sure that any money that the city is getting from the state is being used appropriately. But then just again, kind of looking at things like the property tax, how they limited how much they could raise it, and just looking at that to make sure that certain cities are not going above and overtaxing people. I mean, to be in a city where the median income is $44,000 and have, I think, the second highest taxes in the states is property taxes is kind of insane. And I mean insanely insane. So I just think that there will have to be a discussion and see what exactly we could limit or audit that the city is getting from us, to make sure that, first of all, that's being used appropriately.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Of course.
Could you describe some of the things that you'd like to do to lower the tax burden, things like that?
So there's certain
the fiscal responsibility that you mentioned.
Yeah, so there's certain programs that we're funding that I don't believe are really benefiting the taxpayers. You look at something like the Texas Film Commission, and it sounds like a really great idea to be able to give these incentives to the Hollywood filmmakers to come into Texas to film here. And I think that it sounds nice and it sounds exciting, but when you're looking at what kind of jobs that those are bringing, you're looking at short-term jobs. Usually not high-paying jobs. It might bring some revenue into where the filming location is for a short amount of time, but as soon as they're done filming, those people are going to go back to Hollywood, and then we're not going to see any more of that money. So I think looking at programs like that aren't a long-term benefit to the residents of Texas, I would be for abolishing that. And I spoke about the Texas Enterprise Fund. I think it's important that we revamp the structure of it and make sure that it's being divvied out appropriately, and that we can encourage growth all throughout Texas instead of the same few areas. And then different funding, such as we have a lot of illegals who come over and they receive program, they benefit from programs that our taxpayers are paying for, that we're funding, and so eliminating those kinds of programs would make a big impact, positive.
I just have one more question. You guys are definitely welcome to ask more, but so as you know, like El Paso has, or 70936 is the poorest, right, zip code in the United States, and El Paso itself stagnates in comparison to the rest of the country, where we're having record low unemployment. But in El Paso, for example, we have 20, I think it's like 22% below the average poverty, the national average poverty rate. So, do you have any plans or any focus in terms of bringing business, or maybe not necessarily bringing, but maybe incentivizing small businesses like the one like yourself?
So I think that something we do need to look at is, one thing I think would be great is the E-Verify system, and making sure that people who are being employed by our local businesses are legal. And so I think what we have is, we tend to get a lot of people coming over and they might be working for companies off the record. A lot of times it's not in their best interest either, because they might not be even being paid the minimum wage or have access to workman's comp, etc. So we need to eliminate that possibility. And so I think if we did something like required businesses to use E-Verify or encourage them to use E-Verify, then that might be able to let some people who haven't been able to enter the workforce, because illegals might be holding those jobs right now, that could be something that helps. I think that would be a good place to start. And then again, just being able to incentivize, if we were able to incentivize some bigger businesses to come, and I'm not talking about businesses that that directly compete with small businesses, but certain things like manufacturers, big, like something like Boeing. If we could get somebody like Boeing, we would have a lot of high-skilled people coming into the area. We would be able to hire people here who have those skills, and then it would kind of feed into the community, because the more people we have, the more need we would have for certain small businesses, restaurants, my pet care facility. It would be able to encourage that kind of growth in the small business sector. Did that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes.
I had a question. So given that, on principle, most of us agree that taxes should be lowered, especially with the insane taxes we have now. But coupling that with the need for, or theoretically the need for funding for education, assuming that Texas won't move into a more privatized area of education, how would you go about funding more schools and municipalities, given that your stance on cutting, say, property taxes and limiting sales taxes?
So the first thing I think that we need to do to fix our education system is get the federal government out of Texas. There's no reason that anyone in DC should be telling people in El Paso how to educate their kids. I've spoken with some teachers, and I do understand the need for a state board in order to set the standards. And so I think that kind of eliminating a lot of the oversight, but having that state board so that they can set the standards of what is taught, but not setting standards of how it's taught. Eliminating the teaching for a test, that tax and STAR, I don't even, they just teach for tests now, but if we can remove all of that, and then that would decrease our spending on education by eliminating unnecessary programs. I think that, and secondly, we should be able to put it more in the municipalities and different towns. So so we'll have the state board that says this is our standards, but then giving it to each municipality to be able to bring in that money. And I don't think that property tax is necessarily the best way, but again, that would just I would have to be a really in-depth conversation on how to be able to bring in that money without double taxing. And so I can't say that I'm definitely going to write it down, and I'm going to create a plan for how to bring that in. But I have my ideas of how it should look. But as far as funding, I don't necessarily have an answer for that right now. But I like the question, so thank you for that.
Any other questions? Any other questions that you guys have?
Oh, don't make me end on that one. Come on, y'all. You have one more question.
Who are you voting for? I'm kidding. I was just-
Oh, me? I'll be voting for me. Who are you voting for?
You.
Awesome.
Where does 29 like start and end? Like, what are the limits to the district?
So it's El Paso County, and then Culberson, Hudspeth, Jeff Davis, and Presidio. So it's all the way from tip of Texas over here out to Marfa and Fort Davis area.
Okay.
So 5 counties.
I have another question.
Yes.
Are there any programs specifically that you'd like to defund or anything like that?
Definitely how we talked about the film commission. I would,
But beyond that one?
beyond that one, I think that a lot of entitlement programs need to be reassessed, and I don't believe in giving people a handout. The more programs that we subsidize, the more people rely on government. They become government dependent, and which is a big lie. It's taxpayer dependency at the end of the day, because that's where all the funding comes from. So entitlement programs, anything that somebody who's not a legal resident of the United States is receiving, I would definitely look at all those programs to abolish them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank y'all.
We appreciate it. We're gonna be talking about, I know you have, you mentioned Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
We actually have a discussion on